Warframe is finally here. With that pun out of the way, I want to talk about my first impressions and some possible builds. Considering that she came with a new endurance mission, I think it's fair to talk about her capabilities for such longer missions. Her first ability won't be of much use here, since you can't stop slashing through those enemies if you want to keep that life support up, but there's another reason to keep on slashing them. Her third ability, making enemies drop health orbs when you use her melee to end their brief existence. So even if Voruna does not have some form of direct healing, this works really good, especially with equilibrium. And with this, it's her second ability that fits, as it causes 5 random status effects on a single enemy. And when you kill that enemy, it will spread that status in a general area. I feel like those two abilities are the core of her endurance build, and for them we don't need much. Some range to spread that status further, and some duration. Enemies that flatline while carrying a burden of 5+ status effects will extend the duration of your third ability, so as long as you keep on using your second ability, your third ability will pretty much stay active all day long. Voruna has a very low energy pool, so I feel like flow is a must in her build, or some shards that expand that capacity just a little bit. Like 250 to 300 energy feels like a comfort zone. Archon mods work with her, and Archon Continuity will proc 1 corrosive proc when her second ability procs Toxin. It's not every time, but it makes it possible to hit 6 status effects with 1 ability cast, so it doesn't hurt to use it. Since every enemy we drop with our melee weapon drops a health orb, I found health conversion to work like a charm. Even if we keep tanking the damage, we still keep our stacks up. While it is fully possible to survive with shield gate and nothing else, I find this a fun way to do it since it removes the requirement to spam abilities every 2 seconds. Health conversion, Arcane Guardian, and base armor get us really close to 90% damage reduction, which is formidable. Adaptation is just a cherry on top, not super needed, but then again, for these 2 abilities there isn't much that's needed. And conveniently enough, she works really well with the new Arcane that came with the same update, Arcane Blessing. So you can build a relatively high effective HP. Your pets inherit your HP even from an arcane, which is cool, though pets would be OP if they were to inherit the effects of health conversion, so that's a no-no. Ability strength is not particularly effective in this scenario. We get the same amount of procs from her second ability regardless of it, and her third ability is only affected by duration. When it comes to picking a passive ability for this build, I would go for her third passive, which is efficiency for heavy attacks. Her being able to prime the living hell out of everything means that our melee builds don't need elementals, so just condition overload the living hell out of some slash weapons and then add killing blow, because why not? If you don't use a heavy attack melee with her, then status immunity is probably a second best choice for endurance. But for me, I put Prime Sure-Footed to ignore everyone's worst status. Everything else will live. And this is super strong. If you really want to have 2 extra lives and never get into bleed out, you can bring Panzer Vulpahala with you. Her viral procs sure help with what's happening with Voruna. I believe this can go far. I've only done close to an hour of Steel Pad Endurance with this, and it felt easier than with most other frames. Second build I want to talk about is something that will likely find its place in quicker missions, and it's very high duration build for her first ability. Because being invisible is likely the easiest way to do those fast-paced missions, and Voruna is very good at fast-paced. Her first passive adds boatload of parkour speed on top of sprint speed you get when you're invisible. And I don't think there's much to talk about here, just get as much duration as you can, slap some strength so your critical damage goes up when you break your invisibility, and rest is kinda whatever you can muster. Some survivability, flow of course, because 150 total energy is below acceptable. And I'd still keep health conversion because it's kinda free to reap its benefits. Swapping your passive between mobility and status immunity with this build is something that can help when you see those juicy Eximus enemies, which are always worth it to make a stop for a chance to get a Riven Slivers. With super high duration, all it takes is wiping one group of enemies to give your third ability over 100-second duration, which is pretty much all that we'll ever need for those quick missions. And in the middle of those 2 builds there's this. I sacrificed some duration off of the invisible build and some range off of the endurance build. And we've got combo that kinda works everywhere with a little bit of everything. Archon Flow is kinda an overkill, but if you can fit it in, why not do it? That extra energy orb every now and then won't hurt. But if you don't want to invest too much format to fit all the Archon mods onto Voruna, then I would suggest using Archon Continuity only. Other Archon mods can wait. Archon Vitality only gives you one extra heat proc. Like, it does not hurt to have it in, but it's also not a deal breaker. Those are kinda two general approaches I came up with after my initial impressions. She's super freaking strong, and will tear through anything that can be affected by status. But on the other hand, she's very pacey and invisible for those who want to clear some quick missions carefree. I still want to mess around with her and see if I can get some other fun stuff out of this moon howling frame. Let me know what you did with her build. I'm always happy to take in new ideas. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.